Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into an incredibly dramatic prophecy delivered back in August 2020 by a figure named Jeff Bartley. Whether you're a longtime follower of apocalyptic narratives or this is totally new territory for you, we're going to walk step by step through his vivid visions of the end times. We'll be looking objectively at the structure, the intense imagery, and the core messaging of his warnings, unpacking exactly how this fascinating, modern prophetic narrative is built. Let's get right into it.
In the coming days, you all will see the biggest storm anyone has ever seen hit. Now that is a striking, urgent statement, right? It's literally designed to grab you and pull you straight into this intense narrative. Bartley claimed he received this message directly from the Holy Spirit between August 24th and 29th of 2020. It instantly sets this tone of an imminent, unavoidable global impact, and honestly, it serves as the absolute foundation for everything we're about to explore today.
So that brings us to a massive central question and really the literal starting point of Bartley's message. What exactly does it mean to brace yourself for the end times? He actually notes that he kept hearing this specific phrase, brace yourself, in prophecies shared by another pastor, Dana Coverstone. So looking for clarity, Bartley says he took this exact phrase into his morning prayer time, asking what it practically meant in the context of this massive approaching storm. And according to the source, the answer he got back was incredibly specific. He claims the Holy Spirit actually directed him straight to a dictionary definition of the phrase. To brace oneself means to physically or mentally prepare for an imminent shock to limit adverse impact. Literally, it means to hang on to something or prop yourself against something so you just don't wash away. It's a very physical, tactile instruction for surviving an overwhelming, unstoppable force.
Section 1. Visions of the Storm. The Rock versus the Wave.
Okay, so that literal definition of bracing oneself perfectly sets up this next phase. Bartley describes a duality that's brilliantly illustrated through a series of what he calls flash visions. On one side, we have the rock. He describes seeing a man placed high up on a massive rock, decked out in Roman armor, holding a shield and sword, bracing for impact against the colossal wave. And right as the water hit, literal hands emerged from the rock itself to grasp the man's ankles and keep him totally anchored. He later saw others on this same rock, kneeling or lying face down, also held perfectly safe by these hands. But, contrast that with the other side, the beach. He saw a man down on the sand who took a braced stance, but because he wasn't on the rock, he was immediately blasted right off his feet by the raging water and just swept under. It is a super powerful visual metaphor about where you choose to anchor yourself when things get rough. And that metaphor translates directly into the divine message Bartley claims to have received. He states that God told him, "I will not stop the storm, but I will protect you through the storm." Now, the promise here is highly conditional, but obviously very reassuring for his followers. The idea is, as long as you are firmly grasped to the highest rock, even if you stumble, you'll be picked back up. It's a fascinating narrative that balances these terrifying, earth-shattering global events with a sense of intimate personal protection.
Section 2. A Message of Judgment. The Great Separation.
As we move deeper into the explainer, the narrative shifts from a physical storm to a spiritual sorting process. Bartley starts listing these rapid-fire dichotomies to illustrate a spiritual judgment that he claims is literally happening right now. He describes a world being sharply divided into absolute binaries. You are either the wheat or the tares, the proud or the humble, the cowards or the overcomers, the holy or the profane. In this specific framework, there is absolutely zero middle ground. The source insists that a time of ultimate separation is already here, and everyone is being judged based on their spiritual standing. He reinforces this harsh binary by using that classic biblical metaphor of two trees. On one side, you have the tree of life. This one produces good fruit, its leaves won't wither, and it leaves its followers empowered by glory. But on the flip side is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Bartley warns that its fruit might be sweet to the taste at first, but its ultimate poison to the spirit. He says it brings death and causes those who love darkness to literally be burned by it. So it's a very visceral, intense way of saying that your spiritual fruit completely dictates your eternal survival.
Section 3. Prophecies of the End. A Chronology of the Future.
Having established this intense spiritual sorting, Bartley then actually moves into predicting what is going to happen next. He lays out a clear chronological sequence of prophetic events, and we are going to look at these purely observationally. Phase 1 is the biggest storm, which represents the current shaking of the world. Phase 2 is what he calls the Great Harvest, a period where empowered believers will supposedly walk on the waves and rescue the lost before they drown. Then Phase 3 introduces the arrival of the false Messiah. And finally, Phase 4 wraps it all up with the Millennium of Peace.
Let's zoom in on phase 3 for a second, because the source material takes a highly specific and, honestly, very politically charged turn here. Bartley warns his audience to beware of the one who comes before Jesus, the man of lawlessness and false peace whom the world will supposedly love. And Bartley explicitly identifies this figure, the Antichrist, as former U.S. President Barack Obama. From an analytical standpoint, it's really fascinating to observe how modern apocalyptic frameworks frequently blend ancient biblical terminology with contemporary political figures. It's a tactic that dramatically heightens the urgency and the everyday relevance for their specific audience.
But following this intense period of ultimate deception and turmoil, the prophecy actually points to a utopian resolution, the millennium. Bartley describes an era of profound peace where Jesus reigns over the earth from Jerusalem. It's essentially a return to Edenic conditions. We're talking the lion lying down with the lamb and the absolute end of wars, famines, plagues, and natural disasters. Within the structure of his message, this provides the ultimate light at the end of the very dark tunnel he just described.
Section 4. Final warnings. The call to action.
So after laying out these sweeping visions of massive storms, global judgments, and literally the end of the world as we know it, how does a message like this even conclude? Well, it transitions into a deeply personal, emotional plea. He actually pauses his broader prophecy to lead a spontaneous prayer, actively preparing his audience right then and there. And the steps are clearly laid out. You acknowledge the divine sacrifice, actively forgive others to ensure your own forgiveness, ask for a complete cleansing of sin, and finally surrender and ask to be filled with divine strength. For his audience, this isn't just passive listening. It is an immediate, practical call to action to ensure they are firmly anchored to the rock before the wave hits.
And then he signs off with this deeply emotional statement. If I never do another video, if I never see any one of you ever again, I just want you to know that I love you with all the love that the Lord has put in my heart. It really reflects the very human element behind these intense apocalyptic warnings. Regardless of the extreme nature of the prophecy, you can see the delivery is rooted in a deep, personal conviction. It's driven by this genuine, incredibly urgent desire to save his listeners from what he perceives as impending doom.
Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. Whether you view source material like Jeff Bartley's 2020 warnings as literal prophecy or simply as a fascinating sociological allegory about human anxiety and the desire for order in a chaotic world, the impact is undeniable. So you have to ask yourself, how do these intense binary end times narratives shape the way millions of people view our present reality, our politics, and our future? It's absolutely a critical question to keep in mind as we navigate an increasingly complex world. Thank you so much for walking through this explainer with me. Keep asking questions and keep looking closely at the narratives around you.